Russian doctrine on nuclear uh, uh, the doctrine is restricted by international law and their obligations to the United Nations Declaration and to our relations with the West as a whole. I don't think that this is joke about the nuclear bomb. It is not nowadays. I have any reasons. Russia Russia begins using such kind of weapon of mass destruction. I exclude it absolutely.
Okay, well, let me ask Jason what you think. I mean, how concerned are you? And do you think it was actually necessary to close the embassies that have shut down?
Well, I think that the embassies were closed not due to the fear of a nuclear strike, closed simply due to the fact that it's probably going to be a large strike of Shaheeds, the Iranian drones, as well as with missiles that Russia typically fires on Ukraine, including Kyiv, and is used to kill the civilian population around the country. So I think it was due to that, not nuclear. I don't think there's any serious chance that Russia would use nuclear weapons. I think that's about zero. So I can say I'm totally unconcerned by that.
It's interesting, though, because you're kind of saying then they're making sort of empty threats. But, you know, we heard similar talk in the lead up to the invasion of Ukraine that Putin would never do that. He'd never go that far. And look where we are 3 years later.
Well, this is true, but the difference is that Vladimir Putin, during the course of this war, as well as his proxies, have said about 8 times they've used nuclear saber rattling. At no point have they actually used them or deployed the weapons beyond where they're usually kept. So it's very common for Russia to make these threats. It's not uncommon by any means. And they correctly understand that Western policymakers are very scared of those words. And so it's effective as the people like Jake Sullivan in the White House worry about escalation. But at the end of the day, I see absolutely no evidence to think that anything will come of this. Russia would have far more to lose than to potentially gain, especially since its major allies, such as China, has said that it will not support Russia any longer should it use something like nuclear weapons.
Okay. I mean, Peter, does that give Ukrainians any sense of relief knowing that China, being the power that it is, has stepped up and said, hey, we're drawing this line as well?
Well, it has given Ukraine some relief all along, and this, as a matter of fact, happened during the summit in Uzbekistan, I believe the first summer of war, meaning the summer of 2022, the ancient city of Samarkand, and that's where Xi Jinping actually talked about extending security guarantees to members of the Central Asia community, countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and that was the one serious hint at that same meeting where Xi Jinping dropped about the use of nuclear weapons being completely out of the question, completely irresponsible. Andrea, I would actually add something to that point. While that is a relief, what is not a relief to Ukrainians is the fact that the incoming administration of the U.S. President, Donald Trump, may actually be using this recent nuclear rhetoric by Vladimir Putin as an excuse to try to bring Ukraine as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, to the negotiating table. Members of his team, including J.D. Vance and most recently Mike Waltz, who has been selected as his national security advisor, have actually said that, and criticized this decision as irresponsible. Donald Trump's son, Don Jr., called these people behind this decision at the administration, probably including President himself, Joe Biden, as imbeciles. I mean, you couldn't put it in any starker terms than that. So once again, folks at the Trump administration continue talking about trying.
It seems we've lost Peter's connection. Let's try to rectify that, and we'll come back to him at a later point. Let me check in with Vyacheslav then, because picking up on what Peter was saying and the incoming Trump administration, President Trump has made a lot of how influential he can be and effectively finish this war, he's said, even within 24 hours. I mean, what is Russia making of that? How eager is Russian leadership to work with Donald Trump? And Could he be just effectively underestimating really the complexity of this war in saying what he said?
Okay. Russia is not initiated any problems with the United States because Russian behavior, Russian decision to begin military action in Ukraine is based on their interest in preserve of national security. Because if national security will be guaranteed, I don't think that any other aspirations Russian command, Russian government, Russian president have. Because we don't have any intention to join Ukraine on the spread Russian territory. No, it's not territorial question. It is a national security question. So I don't think.
Okay, but
that,
still, I mean, is Moscow
any other
interested in
influence,
letting
even from China or even from
Is Moscow interested at all in letting President Trump lead the way, as he seems to have indicated he will do, as far as bringing peace to the region and ending the war is concerned?
Well, I don't see any other way to settle the situation in a peaceful manner and don't continue the killing on the battlefield between Ukrainian proxy of American political decision, American ammunition, American rockets, and proxy is Ukrainians who are fighting Russian military forces.
Okay.
I don't think that it will continue very long. I don't think.
Okay, Peter, go ahead. I know you've been waiting to comment.
Yeah, I was starting to say this, but once again, the key players of the Trump administration, including J.D. Vance, including others, and most recently Mike Waltz, the incoming national security advisor, have said time and again that it's time to end this war. Donald Trump has said that. They're already commenting on this decision by Biden to allow Ukraine to use long-range attacks as a bad decision, as a negative, as an escalatory decision. So that leads me to believe that there's some kind of a communication between the incoming administration of Donald Trump and Kremlin that goes back probably way before the actual election. And I suspect that Donald Trump, in his eagerness to be the peacemaker and also to follow up and make good on his promise to end the war within 24 hours, will actually try to bring Ukraine to the negotiating table as quickly as possible, which means under very unfavorable conditions for Ukraine, which would mean essentially a no to NATO for at least 20 years. That's being talked about. Recognizing new territorial realities, as Russia calls it, meaning recognizing Russia's land grabs, and finally reducing its army, standing army, to a symbolic figure of 70,000, essentially capitulating, essentially ceding sovereignty. That could be Donald Trump's plan. I hope it's not, but that is a concern in Ukraine.
Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't share those concerns. I've read those same statements. The fact is, we have to accept, just from the very beginning, that Russia is a poor, impoverished country. It is not taken seriously. Donald Trump does not respect it. Let's start with this. Despite his first term, he did try to seek better relations. Russia is a country that has no ability to do anything besides regional warfare, such as it's doing with its neighbor, which it illegally invaded. Hence why Vladimir Putin is a wanted war criminal internationally and has arrest warrants for him. Aside from, kidnapping Ukrainian children and deporting them to Russia, Russia has no actual ability to pose a threat to a country such as the United States or to any NATO country. That's quite clear. And so at this point, I think what's going to go ahead is that Donald Trump surely will try to end this war. I think that he'll find very quickly that the Russians are dishonest, as they've been dishonest brokers throughout this whole war. And when he finds that, I have no doubt that he will, as U.S. foreign policy dictate, be happy to help Russia be thrown back to the Stone Age as it continues to cooperate with our enemies, such as North Korea, Iran, and China, and against Western civilization. Russia is a global threat, and increasingly the American people and public polling recognize that. Fortunately, I think that this mistake of bringing North Koreans to go fight for Russia was a huge mistake. It shifted U.S. public opinion drastically. And so I think what's going to happen next is going to be something that will be in the best interest of the United States. And what is Russia's interest or non-interest is totally unimportant to everybody that's involved.
I mean, Jason, Russia doesn't really have interests beyond the region. That's what it's always gone after, you know, from Georgia, taking Georgian territory, to what it's doing now in Ukraine. And in the end, the U.S. has always said, don't do it, don't go there, we will stop you, we will, you know, fight on the side of what's right. And the U.S. always seems to lose in that respect. Russia does get what it wants.
But that's not the case. Look in the past year or 2 years, look at Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The governments that were elected there were overthrown after having consultations with Wagner-like groups for trains in Moscow. Look at the Venezuelan dictatorship.
But that's just sending mercenaries. I mean, that's not truly what Russia's saying.
Governments make changes.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Nicaragua, look at Cuba. I think we can look further. We can look at the cooperation